Hello and welcome to another edition of Heavy Hands. I'm Connor. With me as always, it's Phil.
Yo.
UFC 321 is coming up. You okay, Phil? Is everyone all right?
Yeah.
A little moment of panic there. The old brain, it's not functioning the way it used to.
Yeah, it's a difficult number to remember.
Thanks for that commiseration. It's very convincing. This is Heavy Hands. UFC 321 is around the bend. Tom Aspinall, the now undisputed UFC heavyweight champion, versus the undisputed fraud, Ciryl Gane, who should not be fighting in this title fight. It should be Alexander Volkov, and we all know that.
Mm-hmm.
But hey, it's basically the two biggest names in the heavyweight division, and that's cool. Interesting, compelling main event. We've also got, frankly, just a pretty decent pay-per-view lineup here. I mean, look, it's infected by a little modern UFC-ness deeper on the undercard, as all events seem to be now. But you got Virna Jandiroba versus Mackenzie Dern in the co-main event. We got the return of Umar Nurmagomedov after now undeniably the most impressive performance anyone has had against Merab Dvalishvili. He's back against Phil's least favorite fighter, Mario Bautista. Cool fight. Alexander Volkov himself is here. He's fighting Jailton Almeida. Alexander Rakic is fighting Azamat Murzakanov. And even down in the prelims, we got stuff like Alice Garov versus the Iron Turtle, Jin Young Park. Ludovic Klein, Mateusz Rambeski. Looks like some classic action fight material. Just a lot of good stuff. Even sprinkled down to the very bottom, there are some compelling matchups here.
Mm-hmm.
And this comes on the heels of quite a good fight night event in Vancouver last week, in which, hey, at least we did not dismiss Brendan Allen out of hand.
Yep, that is for sure.
He has stymied the momentum of someone I'm sure the UFC hoped would be a rising star for them. But we're mostly going to fixate on UFC 321 today, on Tom Aspinall and Ciryl Gane. Maybe I should also mention here, this has just been a week full of celebrity deaths. The dearly beloved chess grandmaster Daniel Naroditsky tragically died at 29 just a day or two ago. Anthony Jackson, legendary bass player, D'Angelo, neo-soul legend, died last week, I think. But most pertinent to this show, we just lost Duke Roufus, one of the most tenured and influential coaches in the game of MMA. So, rest in peace to Duke Roufus. That definitely came as a shock.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just an incredible amount of influential fighters, an influential, fighter himself.
Mm-hmm.
And and also, someone who I think, grew and changed with the times as well. You know, it was definitely a kind of coach where, I thought I had a good handle on the types of fighter that he was putting out sort of earlier on in his career, and I think he managed to change and evolve with the times. So, very sad stuff.
Yeah. So, rest in peace to Duke Roufus. Let's talk about heavyweights. Perfect segue. Best segues in the game. Tom Aspinall.
Yeah, let's move away from tragedies and on to Ciryl Gane's title shot.
For those who don't know, I mean, give him the background, Phil. Why are we complaining about Ciryl Gane getting this title shot?
Because it was a morally reprehensible way to get to this title shot in a way that deeply affects us in all the things that we like about MMA, because he utterly smoked Alexander Volkov in a way which made it look like a completely unwinnable matchup in their first fight. And then Volkov came back with seemingly nothing to work with, fought his ass off, kept the pressure on, and won what looked to be an extremely clear decision and got robbed. And then Ciryl Gane sat on the fence for like a couple of years, a long time.
Not a couple of years, but basically nearly a year at this point. That fight with Volkov was in December of 2024.
It felt like it was longer ago. Yeah, I went off to do some films and stuff, and then just kind of walked back into the a title shot because he was the only person they had left.
Yep. So, yeah. I think I'm glad you painted it the way you did too, because that was really the gut punch of it for you and I, and I'm sure many others like-minded fight fans. We love nothing better than to see somebody get better. And, well, perhaps the only exception to that is seeing, like, an old guy. Volkov is not as old as you would think, as we just looked up. He's only 36, but he is 16 years into his career, and he has fought a million times. And here in the late stage of his career, to pull out a brilliant performance like that, like, that's our favorite thing, basically. And yeah, that it was a slap in the face for that reason, as much as it was simply just not a good decision. It was one of the clearest robberies I can recall, actually.
Yeah. We always talk about how robberies are often overplayed. They're often explicable.
Yeah.
And I just thought this one was awful. Yeah. And obviously, this came on the heels of Ciryl Gane putting in one of the most truly pathetic performances in recent memory against John Jones.
Yep.
So yeah, in this kind of situation, you mostly just find yourself thinking, God, I hope he doesn't find some way to pull this out. Because it would be an affront if he was to win this.
Hard to disagree. It is, unfortunately, like many heavyweight matchups, at least on Tom Aspinall's side, one where I don't have nearly as much material as I would like to work with to know what to expect out of this matchup. Ciryl Gane, of course, is a decision machine. I have seen a lot of long Ciryl Gane fights. I have seen him tested in all manner of ways. I think I have a pretty good picture of the kind of fighter he is.
Yep.
What I know about Tom Aspinall is that he's exceedingly violent. He is a monstrous athlete, not just for his size, but in general. Very fast, very powerful, and he seems to be pretty well-rounded. However, most of his fights last like 2 minutes max. And that is always one of my least favorite kinds of. Not that I'm not excited about this, and I want to see Tom Aspinall defending the championship, and he should have been defending this belt much sooner. I'm with you guys on all of that. I'm sure that's a commonly held opinion, but for me personally, it's always a special kind of frustration to have to like prognosticate on somebody who has given me nothing but little tiny samples of their work. And to then have to just guess what might happen in a fight where they cannot just blow their opponent out of the water. All we have on that front from Tom Aspinall is that fight with Andrei Arlovsky, where, as expected, he did seem to kind of slow down after that initial burst, but he also stabilized, but against an old man. Like, it's just hard to know how far to take that performance. It's not totally damning. It might assuage some fears you would have about what happens to a guy like Aspinall down the stretch, but you can't. I just don't know how much water it really carries.
Yeah, I think all that is very, very fair. You simply, the only flaw that Aspinall has shown was that his knee exploded at some point, and that he hasn't shown the ability to sustain because he simply never needed to.
Right.
Now, I will say, looking at him, I don't think and this is where the actual worry comes, right? Is that I don't know that he's actually a Conor McGregor style locked in fast starter.
Mm-hmm.
I think that heavyweight simply makes him look like this. And, the fact that he's incredibly powerful and potent. I think he comes out very quick. He's obviously comes out of the gate, looking to do damage and looking to finish the fight very quickly, and that works out for him a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think he's immediately cued into his opponent's responses and, just comes out ready to land devastating shots immediately. I think he does actually need a bit of warming up time, as in that Curtis Blades fight, the one where his knee gave out on him.
Mm-hmm.
He's just kind of goes storming after Blades, and Blades is actually kind of lighting him up a bit,
mm-hmm.
even in the tiny amount of time that's going on. He gets low kicked, and he's going after Blades, throwing hard, sharp punches and not noticing much what comes back at him. Yeah. And that's one of the reasons that will always make him a concerning proposition. Because you're like, oh, is he actually just doing this on the understanding that everyone is going to be shocked by him when he steps in there?
Yeah.
And that particular time, Curtis Blades was not shocked. And, again, the actual ending of the fight was that his knee gave out and it's a weird finish and blah, blah, blah. That doesn't stop the fact that he was kind of getting tuned up a bit before that happened.
Right.
Balanced against this, though,
mm-hmm.
is the fact that Ciryl Gane is not a counterpuncher. And if Aspinall does rush him, just kind of goes after him, tries to put his back to the cage, treats him like he did, for example, Volkov when he fought him, it's actually difficult to see Gane responding any better, because what Gane wants to do is stand miles away from people and pick them off. Forced onto the back foot, as Volkov did to him, again, a much slower and more cumbersome fighter than Tom Aspinall,
right? He
suddenly looked extremely pedestrian. He does not want to counterpunch. So it's one of these weird things where you're like, Ciryl Gane has a very unique skill set, and I find myself thinking, how much will it actually apply against Tom Aspinall in any way other than the most generic heavyweight way, which is that he's a big man and he can hit hard? Because none of that hard hitting is something that Ciryl Gane actually wants to do. Right. If you get me, like, none of his optimal game plan that he wants to run works particularly well with the way I think Aspinall will want to approach him, right, or traditionally does approach everyone he comes up against, which is that he comes out and immediately starts to pressure them as hard as he can.
Immense pressure, pins them against the fence, and starts lighting them up with combinations.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That is absolutely a concern. And on the flip side, I think we should get into that in more depth, but just to note that on the flip side, supposing there's an early storm here that Ciryl Gane successfully weathers, and that may also, in fact, probably should, by the way, involve Tom Aspinall's wrestling, which was the other major element of Alexander Volkov's stolen win over Ciryl Gane, as well as that terrible performance against John Jones. But the flip side of that is that if there is a storm that Gane can successfully weather, you have to wonder, what the hell does Aspinall have that is not the early onslaught? And you can see flashes of this, as you said, even in that like short little abortive Ciryl Gane fight, or rather Curtis Blades fight, where I agree. I don't think he's 100% like locked in. I think very few fighters have that ability that Conor McGregor has. Even guys who are not slow starters usually need to feel the opponent out a bit to kind of catch their timing and get into a rhythm. He does not look like one of those fighters. He just looks like a guy who is confident and fast and powerful and believes that he can go out there and do damage. But in the more protracted fight with Andrei Arlovski, you see some very bad defensive instincts and just defensive technique from Tom Aspinall. You know, like, he likes to pull. He likes to lean straight back. And this has led to some devastating early finishes. But in that fight where he couldn't get Arlovski out of there immediately, there's a moment late in round 1 where he just gets driven all the way across the cage, straight on the back foot, losing his stance, leaning. You know, he seems relatively calm and aware of what's coming at him. It's not full-on panic, but it's also not technically sound. And I gotta wonder how well a guy whose really only answer to punches at range is to lay back in his stance might fare against jab machine Ciryl Gane.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, it's heavyweight, man. The fight is going to be defined in large part by the limitations of the two fighters, even at this really very high level.
Yeah, I agree. I do think that, like, I think Gane's game is just going to, it looks like it will just fall apart against someone with comparable speed to him. Aspinall he's just so quick. I mean, his fight against Pavlovich, like, there's a bunch of, like, very scary moments against Pavlovich where Pavlovich is just swinging in the pocket. And again, like, Aspinall's doing, you know, a big exaggerated leans and slips and so on. Nothing actually hits him because he's just really, really quick, and he has good instincts. And, you know, eventually Pavlovich steps out of position, and then Aspinall just instantly deads him. And, yeah, I mean, I think as much as Aspinall's confidence in the first round is a function of him being, you know, someone who never meets anyone like him, so much of, like, Gane's defensive poise, such as it is I think a function of him never fighting anyone who's like him.
Agreed.
But everyone is smaller and weaker and slower, and he's just like, well, you're going to be intimidated by me, giant, you know, I'm a giant Greek god of a man, and then whilst you're intimidated, I will stay here and pick you off.
Yeah.
I totally. But yeah, I think it is a concern, obviously, to see if Aspinall goes late. Again, if he's, you know, overreacting on defense is a key way in which people get picked off by low commitment strikers. If all you do is prod and someone, you know, reacts to you prodding them by kind of throwing themselves around, they will A, gas themselves out, and B, just throw themselves out of position, and you will just start being able to poke them once they're out of, you know, once they're leaning back over their back leg, and then suddenly you're piling up damage. Yeah, it's just a question whether it gets to that point, and whether Aspinall can simply keep himself safe by constantly taking Gane down. And obviously there's the fact that, like, Gane has looked utterly terrible in his last two fights. I mean,
well, he had that fight against Spivak.
Oh, yeah.
Where he looked pretty good and actually pretty aggressive. Quite aggressive by the Ciryl Gane standard. But it is also notable Sergey Spivak is more an overachiever than a genuinely good skilled heavyweight.
Yeah.
He has some skills in areas where most heavyweights have massive gaps, and he's tough, and but he is definitely well below Ciryl Gane athletically. And runs out of ideas pretty quickly, too.
Yeah, just crushingly slow, completely lacking a range game. Ciryl did not even have to worry about the fact that he seems to have really terrible grappling instincts because it never got there.
Yep, I think he just felt completely unthreatened by Spivak, and he did not feel unthreatened by both Volkov and Jones, and those fights led to, this is what happens when like a guy whose pretty much primary goal in a fight is to neutralize the opponent just doesn't feel like he has any ability to actually control them or stop them doing what they want to do. He can end up looking pretty bad, pretty feckless.
Yeah, just it really did. The Jones fight was bad, but I think the Volkov fight showed how little it took to turn what looked like a completely unwinnable matchup. How that was just an incredibly thin layer of fear that Volkov had to break through.
Yep.
Volkov was just like, oh, what if I just stick to this guy? And that was it.
Yep. He didn't even pressure him really hard as Aspinall will. He just kind of refused to be driven back and slowly, methodically took the space that Gane gave him. And when Gane made weird, resets and stuff, as he is always doing, Volkov actually punished them. He just reached out, even overextended, just reaching out with a long jab when Gane was between stances and just made him very uncomfortable. It didn't take all that much. Pretty simple game plan.
Yep. I think, Gane freaking out when people show him no respect. It's just the fact that as I said, it would just be such an awful outcome.
Yeah.
Just like from a philosophical perspective,
if
we somehow ended up here, in some ways it would be sort of a perfect dark ending for heavyweight. If this guy had just looked absolutely dreadful and then wins in some way. We find out that actually Tom Aspinall's weakness is that he has an incredibly soft back of his head. And
gets his skull.
Gane gets him with one of his deadly hammer fists.
Stoves
and he
his
just
skull
immediately goes out.
He does.
But yeah.
He does look like he might have an incredibly soft back of the head. Sort of no offense, Phil, but sort of strikes me as something that might be a kind of a British Isles genetic trait, I'm sorry. Just the vibe I get.
Yeah, it was a generational calcium deficiency down in the mines where they came from and so on. Just the skulls just never built up.
Yeah, Tom Aspinall's fontanelle never closed. 30% of all people from the British Isles. What a tragedy.
Mm-hmm. That's why we really hate the French. And you attack our weak spot the entire time.
They're perfect hard skulls. Those bastards.
It's actually difficult to find ways that I think Gane can win this fight, to be honest.
Yeah.
There aren't just it turns out that Tom Aspinall's actually really bad. If he goes into rounds 2 and 3, really bad.
Yeah.
Again, which would be, a perfect ending for heavyweight. Yeah. And if that does happen, I think they can just close the division.
Close it.
They really just should.
Or just combine it with 205. That's better than closing it. Let all the guys stay and then see how, then you get all the fascinating matchups where it's guys at 205 who are vastly superior athletes and technicians, but they're light heavyweights for a reason. They're cowed by guys who are just fat and bigger than them.
Or they could close it. They could,
yeah.
They could just go out and instead of they're going to put the belt on, Ciryl Gane. They can just drop it into a small portable furnace.
Mm-hmm.
And they can just be and they can just give an announcement. They could be look, this is from us to you, the entire rest of the heavyweight division. You could have stopped this from happening,
mm-hmm.
and you didn't. and this guy won, and it was horrendous, and all of you just need to find new jobs. This division is going the way of women's featherweight. We can't crown this man champion. Goodbye. And that's just the end of the card.
Yep. Sure.
Just a
I'd be in.
Just a belt slowly melting down in the center of the cage.
Yeah. Just hold the camera on that. No commentary, no music. You can see people filtering slowly, quietly out of the arena in the background.
Yep. I think that's honestly the only way to go.
I am going to pick Tom Aspinall. I think even if there are defensive deficiencies, I think he understands the idea is to keep the pressure on Ciryl Gane, to put him against the fence as often as possible, to punch with him as often as possible, and to threaten him with wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, anytime we have seen Ciryl Gane against somebody who either makes the right decisions, i.e. those decisions, or matches him physically, and there are a few examples of that, we have not seen a particularly brilliant fighter. Even that fight with Francis Ngannou was...
It was bad.
It was really bad. Yeah, a fight that was basically just each round decided by a difference of 2 strikes, when there were only 15 thrown on a side, and then capped off by Ciryl Gane making what has now become a sort of trademark terrible grappling decision. But I think you can just look at Francis Ngannou. And I'm not faulting the man for being anxious about fighting Francis Ngannou. Who wouldn't be? But he was not able to fight like Ciryl Gane because he had this big, giant freak athlete in front of him.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't want to have exchanges. And I think Tom Aspinall will force them. That's the other thing about Tom Aspinall. This could obviously be a problem at some point in his career. Who knows? It might even be a problem here. It is heavyweight, but as much as he will sometimes overreact on defense, he's also pretty comfortable just eating a shot if it means getting in and landing 3 or 4 hard ones in return.
Yep.
So I just think it's a very straightforward game plan to accept that you might get hit and go in there and make the dude trade with you. And I think Tom Aspinall has proven, if nothing else, he's capable of fighting like that.
Yep. Yeah, I tend to agree. I think what we've heard from the Aspinall camp is that they don't sound like they're very impressed with Gane. And that probably sounds like the right approach.
Yeah,
I think a lot of fighting him has proven to be mental, as Alexander Volkov found out. And I just think, honestly, think he's probably just going to get finished. It might even just be a classic Tom Aspinall, 1 minute. Oh, we didn't learn anything. Demolition job. I would actually, as much as Gane's recent career has been a horror, I still wouldn't actually like to see that happen. I would like to see a bit more from Tom Aspinall.
Yeah.
I don't actually enjoy that much doing the whole Mike Tyson thing of him just
I know.
melting everyone instantaneously.
We got some pushback for that sentiment when we were lamenting that we didn't get to see more of Pereira Ankalaev. And there are other things to lament there, and also you were being a huge downer about Yuri Prochazka. But that is just, I like watching fights, and I want to see some competition. I want to see some people testing each other, and all the more so when it's a big, high-profile fight with high stakes. I never want to see an instantaneous knockout. Honestly, I would love to see at least a full first round. I'll take that.
Mm-hmm.
Put him away at 4 minutes and 30 seconds. I'll go home happy.
Yep. I suspect that we are getting another quick finish.
We might. We just might. Fingers crossed. All right. UFC 321 has more to offer. Let's take our first break. When we come back, we've got Virna, Jandiroba, Mackenzie, Dern. We've got Umar, Nurmagomedov versus Mario Bautista. Maybe some others. Maybe a look back at De Ridder, Allen. Not sure, but we will be talking about those two other big fights definitely after this.
Hey everybody, thanks for listening to this week's Heavy Hands. If you like what you hear, please consider pledging to support the podcast on Patreon. Patreon is basically continuous crowdfunding. You sign up to contribute a certain amount per month to help us with production costs and the like, and in return you get rewards ranging from a mention on the Heavy Hands website to a question or topic of your choice being discussed on the show. We have a lot more in the works to reward you for your help, and we appreciate every contribution. No amount is too small. Just head over to patreon.com and find how you can help out, the only show dedicated to the finer points of face punching. Now let's get back to it.
Welcome back to the show. Let's talk about some women's strawweights. Virna Jandiroba and Mackenzie Dern are fighting in the co-main event of this card. A rematch of a fight that
we knew that.
Yeah, we knew that. We didn't have to remind ourselves of that or get sort of luckily accidentally reminded. We basically know. I mean, not to gloat, Phil, but we basically know everything about combat sports.
Yeah. Whenever it seems like we've totally forgotten something incredibly important, it is just because we're trying to keep the listeners on their toes, and
That's right.
Often leaving a trail of breadcrumbs for them towards a greater truth through our omission.
What is the greater truth? Well, we can't just tell you.
No.
You have to figure it out for yourself.
And subscribe to the Patreon.
That's where it's contained.
Yeah.
So we were.
Well, I never really thought about how easy, about the actual slide towards trying to start a cult would be like. But no, I'm just trying out the first steps, and I'm thinking, you know what?
It's kind of fun.
Seems kind of cool.
So, yeah, this is a rematch of a fight that happened in 2020, if I recall correctly.
Mm-hmm.
And the worst possible thing, I think, happened in that matchup, which is that it was two submission grappling specialists, two jiu-jitsu players, having a kickboxing match.
Yeah.
Some classic MMA shit. And I don't know. I mean, I suppose we can start this discussion with that question in mind. Like, what do you think the likelihood is of that happening again, Phil?
Pretty good.
Yeah. Unfortunately high, I would say. Because I look at this and, look, Mackenzie Dern is a dynamite on the ground. Very fast, very smooth transitions. And just like a great attacking style, of submission grappling. I get that. But, and also I'm an idiot who doesn't understand grappling like 30% as well as I understand striking. That has to be said. But in general, I think there are quite a few matchups in the history of MMA where a feared grappler has been tested by somebody who simply assumes that they'll be able to defend and pursues getting good positions. And they often crush the feared grappler from top position. There's Paul Felder, Charles Oliveira. Can you hear my cat in the background? Shut up! There's
not actually this time.
Yeah, he's sort of lowering his volume, but he's increased his frequency. Do you hear that one? Will you shut the fuck up? God. Why do I love
the cat
you?
is real. I have heard it before for anyone who's listening to this. This isn't just Connor, being insane.
Everywhere I go, I'm at the coffee shop.
Yeah.
Anyone hear that cat?
Cat.
But, what the hell was I saying? Sorry, that was very distracting.
People destroying feared grapplers.
Yeah, there's Felder Oliveira. There's Alan Belcher, Husumar Palhares.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
Last weekend, Brendan Allen. Not that he's not a grappler himself, but Brendan Allen, we talked about this. Like, this man just does not fear other grapplers.
Mm-hmm.
And he went in there and he was like, shit, I can grapple with Reinier de Ritter. Yeah, I'll take top position. I'll work him over with ground and pound. And he fucking broke Reinier de Ritter. That's usually what happens. And I look at this matchup and I think, does Virna Jandiroba really want to be like slugging it out on the feet with Mackenzie Dern? Like, Jandiroba has improved somewhat as a striker since their first matchup. But so has Dern, as you pointed out to me before, Phil. And it's just that they've improved in different ways. Jandiroba has gotten more technically consistent, more stable over her feet. Her form has improved. Mackenzie Dern's form has not really improved at all. Couple flashes here and there, but she's gotten just more aggressive and confident in leveraging her power and her toughness. Does Jandiroba want to mix it up with her there? Or might it not be worth it to be like, I'm going to be the one person who, like, shit, Tisha Torres defended your submissions. I bet I can too. And I'm a great top position grappler. She should do that. I just again, maybe there's likely some technical details that I'm missing, but I just think philosophically, it's never a very good idea to approach an opponent thinking, I cannot do the thing that I'm actually very good at because I might get in trouble. Therefore, I will rely on something where I have far fewer options and comfort and experience. The whole idea of game planning by paring away your own skills, I think, is fundamentally misguided, and it's often proven to be the wrong decision.
Yeah, and it is worth pointing out that Jandiroba just doesn't win fights on the feet.
Yeah.
Like, Dern might be an incredibly ugly striker, but she has learned to sit down and throw with power.
Yeah.
She's not always... Like, her time with Jason Perillo means that she's not always, like, throwing out her hand and then using it to pull herself through space. She can actually hit now. And, yeah, so she was able to basically beat Angie Hill, essentially, on the feet just by out-punching her.
Yep.
Jandiroba is not going to beat Mackenzie Dern on the feet.
Right.
I will say that. I don't believe that's a valid path to victory for her. And conversely, like, I don't know what she takes from the grappling exchanges in their last fight, because, you know, she had a hell of a time trying to control Dern on the floor, and, you know, there was some slightly spooky submissions, and Dern was attacking her own, was attacking wrestling herself, which, again, Dern herself has gotten better at doing.
Definitely.
Like her striking, we're talking, this is an improvement from a very low bar. And
mostly in terms of her commitment to it, rather than, you know, she got thrown on her head a couple times when she tried it in that last fight with Amanda Hebus, for example.
But she is still going to be trying to force the issue. But yeah, all the grappling exchanges in that fight, Dern was able to make something happen. But it wasn't a death sentence whenever Jandiroba got her down.
Yeah. She's never been submitted, Virna Jandiroba.
Yep.
In a pretty long career at this point, including a fight, granted one that was mostly conducted on the feet, but including a fight with this woman. So what's to fear? Go out there and try to put her on her ass and just control top position and laugh at her submission attempts, defend them, and keep her there. Like, that should be the goal. And take her down again if she escapes. Like, I don't know.
I mean, I think if she gets submitted on the ground by Dern, that is fine. But I think that other than that, she simply has no way of winning this fight.
I tend to agree. And that brings us back to the what seems the unfortunately high likelihood that is what she will end up doing. Just based on what happened in their previous fight. And some other matchups of Jandiroba's. I think she can just be a little overcautious a lot of the time.
Yeah, and she just, she needs to be aggressive. the time where she had the most sustained control over Dern was, unsurprisingly, when she took her down near the cage.
Mm-hmm.
And Dern did not have the room to sweep and attack arm bars and triangles and so on from her back. Yeah. And whilst I think she did she was getting close, or she either got a sweep or she was getting close to one towards the end of that exchange. It shows like there's a way that you can like control this fight and you can gas Dern out. But yeah, I mean, both of these are essentially fighters that have capitalized on the lack of grappling acumen in this division in one way or another. Jandiroba via the wrestling, Dern by being a dynamite submission grappler. But yeah, it's just simply the fact that Dern is aggressive and athletic enough to win fights that don't involve grappling. And so I do kind of have to pick her.
Yeah.
But it is also like it's an obvious IQ test fight. If Jandiroba doesn't go for the takedowns this time, I think she's just being stupid. Like, if she doesn't try and force the issue. As I said, even if she gets submitted, it's at least, it's the same thing as those fights where you have to embrace the risk of being knocked out to actually win.
Absolutely. You might get submitted because Dern is very dangerous on the ground. Amanda Hibash, for example, even in that most recent fight, she did quite well against Dern on the ground, except for the moments when she got caught in omoplatas and got swept and then also got submitted at the end. It's a danger. It might happen. But as you said, just on a basic level, if she chooses only to strike with Dern, she's likely to lose.
Mm-hmm.
It's not something that just might happen. Of course, it's a fight. Anything could happen. But in all likelihood, she's just in there against somebody who's more comfortable being aggressive, who will make her power a factor, and is going to accept exchanges in which she will be way more comfortable than Jandiroba, based on what we've seen from her in the past as a striker. So, yeah, I'm going to pick Dern too, because I like we said at the very top, I think it's unfortunately likely that Jandiroba will not pit her A game against Dern's A game. And the sad fact is that I think Dern's B game may be much uglier, but is functionally significantly better than Jandiroba's.
Yep. Basically agree 100%.
Yep. So I think that's all I've got to say about this one. Hopefully, we do get to see some grappling, and it's always much easier for me to talk about grappling in more depth and detail when I have an example in front of me to look at rather than guessing at what might happen. So fingers crossed. I'd be very happy to see Jandiroba get this one back, and in particular getting it back on the ground. But we'll see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, let's take another break then. And when we come back, we have Umar Nurmagomedov versus Mario Bautista and who knows what else. But given that we will spend at least 10 minutes listening to Phil booing and hissing, and another 5 not listening to my cat making noise, but listening to me talking about my cat making noise. We'll see what else we have time to get to. But definitely Nurmagomedov, Bautista after this.
Financial support is fantastic, but there are other, even easier ways to support Heavy Hands. Perhaps the best is by spreading the word. We know our fan base. You're all cool, popular people with serious social media presences. You're tastemakers and trendsetters. Okay, there are 1 or 2 of you that don't fit that description. You know who you are, but no matter what, you can always help us out by telling folks about the show. And you can also give us a positive rating and review on iTunes and Stitcher, things like that. We rely on word of mouth and positive feedback to grow and improve, so thank you very much for your time and your help. Now, back to the show.
All right. Welcome back to Heavy Hands. We've got a very interesting bantamweight fight here, and one which Phil should be, I think it's likely he will be very satisfied by. because much as I have been forced into the role, coerced into the role of resident Mario Bautista defender, I have already conceded off the air that I think Umar is simply better than him.
Yeah, it's one of those tricky fights, isn't it? Where you just look at it and you're like, it's not necessarily like a style clash. Mm-hmm. Where you're like, oh, this guy goes forward and this guy puts himself against the cage, or this guy's, got fundamental weaknesses in the areas that this guy's strong. It really kind of is that Umar Nurmagomedov seems like just Mario Bautista, as much as he is,
go on,
just excrement, just one of the worst people to ever walk the earth. He is a good fighter. He's a very good fighter, but he does not look to be in the tier that Umar Nurmagomedov is, which is, potentially in the same tier as Merab Dvalishvili, the greatest bantamweight of all time.
Yeah. Yeah. As we mentioned at the top, I mean, Umar has undisputably the strongest performance against Merab under his belt. A fight in which, as I think it's kind of hard not to do, he clearly underestimated some aspects of the fight. Like, I just don't think you can get a good estimation of what it feels like to fight Merab until you're actually doing it, and you're like, what the fuck, he's cheating? This isn't fair?
Yeah.
And despite the fact that he conducted about 2/3 of that fight looking horribly gassed, because that's what Merab does to people, he still fought brilliantly. Because on top of being a really great athlete, he is just a superbly well-rounded technician. He's very much like akin to Islam Makhachev in that regard. Of course, you can see his facial hair and you might guess he's got tremendous wrestling and grappling skills. But he's a really rock solid, like just fundamentally sound striker. Which isn't to say he doesn't put himself in some weird positions and whatnot, but the basic construction of his striking game is like exactly the kind of stuff I am constantly begging MMA fighters to do on the feet. Controlling the distance, using angles to force the opponent to make compromises in order to get to you. And enforcing those angles with the jab. And most miraculously of all, he has that game out of both stances. He's just like a good fencer jabber out of southpaw and orthodox.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, what can you say? The guy's a great fucking fighter.
Yeah. And so, before this, we were kind of looking, or at least I was looking at Batista's fights, trying to find out, what's the pivot point that causes them to change. Because
why is he so loathsome?
What's that?
Why is he so loathsome, you asked yourself?
Yeah, exactly. I want to, because every monster is made. Everyone may not have an excuse, but they have a reason. But no, I was trying to figure out why was the Aldo fight so horrific, and what was going, and also as you sort of pointed out, what was going on towards the end of the Patchy Mix fight, and I think it is at least partially that Bautista has built shifting into his game too much as something as a kind of smokescreen to befuddle his opponents.
Yeah.
He is always looking to shift as the last part of what he's doing to enter into the pocket. And what this has meant is that at a certain point, people start picking this, and also just, changing stances for not very much reason at all. But I think it is crucial to his ability to step inside. He has gotten into the habit that he's he's always shifting into a position and covering it with strikes as he does so.
Right.
But obviously the problem is when you're doing this is that when you are changing stances, you are completely square and people can simply counter you. And I think basically this was Aldo just in the Aldo fight. Aldo just picks up on that fact that he's shifting in, and that Aldo just starts picking him off mid-shift. And similarly, I think the Patchy Mix fight is a bit different in that he realizes he's so far ahead, he doesn't want to take that risk anymore of shifting. So he simply just kind of stays in southpaw for the entire back half of the fight. But essentially, it does look like the Umar fight will have a lot of shades of the Sandhagen fight for Umar, because Umar picks people off with long, clean, straight strikes when they try and get in on him, and B also hits very clean takedowns. I think when Sandhagen tries to shift in on him, I think Umar just takes him off his feet immediately. So I do think that, even aside from just the feeling this is a really high quality fighter and this is one of a slightly lower class, it does seem like he will be able to find that sort of fulcrum point that seems to be the difference between Mario Bautista overwhelming people who can't figure out what he's doing with his feet, like Ricky Simone,
right,
and people who kind of can, like Jose Aldo. I think Umar can, and he can counterpunch him, and he can probably take him down as well.
Yeah. I mean, I just to add to that, I mean, watching Bautista coming up, which is a part of the reason for my fondness for him, because I had kind of pegged him, I think, relatively early compared to a lot of people as a guy that I just thought had a bright future, not pre-UFC career, but pretty early on. I was, I don't think most people were out there calling him to beat Ricky Simone. And I just saw something. I was like, you know what? I think he's going to show up. And my conception of Bautista in that phase of his career was, as a guy who was fast and powerful, who was an insanely good scrambler, which he remains. And that is actually something whatever the result, I hope we get to see some of that in this fight. I trust we probably will. But to see Umar's takedowns and top control pitted against Bautista's just natural talent for creating and coming out on the right side of scrambles. And I also saw him as a guy who would just reliably crank up the pressure and intensity as the fight went on. Because that really defined a lot of his fights in his early UFC career, is that he would just get more and more aggressive. And we have really seen that stymied both in and since the Jose Aldo fight. And I think you have hit correctly upon, I agree with your assessment of the reasons for that. What happens against Jose Aldo is essentially that Bautista, he's actually having a lot of trouble anytime he isn't going forward in the first two rounds of that fight. His footwork is just not up to snuff. Jose Aldo has a fantastic jab. We all know that. And he is just popping his head back and even drawing, feinting and drawing big movements out of him, nearly counters him cleanly with a step knee at 1 or maybe even 2 points. Is just really exposing that Bautista is not his equal in a range battle, and certainly not off the back foot. And so he realizes I have to go forward. I have to pressure. This has happened in a lot of his fights. A lot of them have started out with moments like that. And then, as I said, he just cranks it up and gets more and more aggressive as the fight goes on. But then Aldo started to get a read on those entries and the follow-up footwork that you mentioned. This is the other thing with Bautista too. I think it makes it more difficult for him. I don't think he's very good at closing distance subtly.
No.
Like beyond the shifting, I don't think he makes very good use of feints. I don't think he really has full utility with his jab as a sort of key to unlock the opponent's position. He's not a guy out here who is like double and triple jabbing, or jabbing and then throwing the jab away and stepping in and landing the right hand. He tends to coil and spring. And then when he springs, he tends to shift. And just walk forward throwing with lots of power. And he's fast and he is powerful, and it can often work. But Aldo started to pick up on that. He started to get great timing on his entries, and he just started firing nasty counters every time that Bautista came in. And he wasn't even landing a ton. But I think what happened is Bautista found himself in a fight where he had already realized he had to be controlling the initiative and the momentum, but also he did not like the fact that he had kind of stopped landing. He had stopped being able to surprise Aldo, and Aldo had started to fine-tune the counters, and he was in increasing danger in the third round, trying to keep that pressure on. And I think that's why he just resorted to cage stalling. He's like, well, this is the way to stay on him. And and Aldo bears some of the blame for that working as well as it did as well. This has been a historical weakness of Jose's.
He always does.
He just burns way too much time allowing people to hold him against the fence in unthreatening ways. It happened to him against Merab too, and to an extent against Volkanovski. But yeah, I mean, I think that's going to be a problem against Umar. I mean, what this fight is also is like an interesting treatise on how stance switching should be used.
Yes. That's a good point.
Cause that was the other aspect of Bautista's fight with Patchy Mix. I mean, as much as that was pretty much just a one-sided beatdown and a huge, unfortunate exposure of Patchy Mix's inexperience against, fellow reasonably sized athletic opponents, more athletic opponents in that case, certainly. It was also a fight where in round 3, Bautista, actually like halfway through, he sort of he switches to southpaw kind of inexplicably because he was killing Mix with the jab and the 1-2 before that. And then he it's similar to the Aldo fight in a way, while being a lot less significant, but like he sort of can't convince himself that he is going to be able to like surprise Mix on the entry. His output wanes. Mix just continues eating his shots, but he's like firing back, and it just has the feeling of Bautista having like run out of ideas. Like, I've got this limited array of entries I can go to, and what else am I supposed to do? It's not like cooking him anymore.
Yep.
And he just kind of, it doesn't have a lot of...
He's not giving me any more like feedback that I can build on.
Right. And we saw there, I think, that he just doesn't have a lot of flexibility as an attacker. And so for that reason, we've seen his old tendency to just build and build and build on opponents kind of wane. It's just no longer a thing it seems he can reliably do against a certain level of opponent.
Yeah, because I mean, that was the weird thing about the Patchy Mix fight, right? Is that the main thing was like, well, Patchy Mix is giant and super dynamic, and Mario Bautista does start slow, so maybe Mix will just smoke him in round 1.
Right.
But instead, it's like Bautista actually does very well in round 1, and then is just tapering off by the end of the fight. Yeah,
and the Aldo fight kind of has that shape as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think just a lack of flexibility has sort of been exposed here, a lack of ability to actually continue growing the initiative against an opponent who, in the case of Patchy Mix, just kind of like stops responding to the threats the way Bautista wants him to. They're all still working, like, You know, you're still hitting him, but he just kind of, like we were talking about with Oliveira a week ago, like he just kind of stops overreacting, and starts standing his ground and trying to come forward regardless. And it spooks Bautista.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, I still don't think Umar is the technician that Aldo is, but he has, I think, the stylistic construction to trouble Bautista simply by sniping him down the middle the entire time. Again, Sandhagen has a lot of those same tendencies as Bautista, as, you know, as far as start switching and overwhelming the opponent, but he's just frankly, just like a deeper and smarter version of most of what Bautista does, and is less less, I think, addicted to shaking people up by doing weird stuff.
Yeah,
frankly.
Certainly. Yeah. He's not the technician Aldo is, but he just has rock solid principles to his striking. And his stance switching, it's like I said, he's operating this same really like conceptually very simple game out of both stances. Keep the jab on the opponent, train it on their center line, and punish them if they try to break through without doing the necessary work. And if they do the necessary work, reset your feet on a new angle and make them start over. Like, that's the basics of positional fighting. That's a principled way to conduct yourself at long range. And that's how Nurmagomedov fights, while also mixing in shockingly fast kicks and stuff. But he's pretty much just like a distance management jab machine at range. And he's really good at it. He's consistent. And he mixes in the right kind of feints and speed changes to keep it working. It doesn't. This is the worrying thing when you see a guy like Bautista apparently running out of ideas. It's like, in reality, you only need 3 or 4 ideas. You just have to find different ways of compiling them over the course of the whole fight. That's what like flexibility really means. It's not continually pulling out new tricks. It's just continually finding ways to keep the same tricks working.
Yeah, and that's one of the more impressive things about Nurmagomedov's fight with Sandhagen, is that with a very limited tool set, he just slowly and steadily pushes Sandhagen out of the fight.
Yep. So it's hard not to pick him here. We've basically just only seen increasingly impressive examples of his real talent and skill as a fighter over the last 2 or 3 years.
Yep. Like the Gane fight, it would be a tragedy.
Yeah. Well, more for you. I mean, you know, if Bautista wins, it almost certainly means that he has done something really impressive to get it.
Yeah.
You can't forgive him at this.
Just gonna tune in to see just like Twitter on fire with people like, turns out that like somehow Umar has somehow gained a horrific weakness to being fence stalled.
Oh no.
And Bautista just held him there for 2 rounds.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose, now that you mention it, I would kind of get something out of that too. It would certainly have me looking forward to next week's episode. But yeah, I think Nurmagomedov is really something special, and Bautista is... I think
we can see him approaching his limits.
Exactly, yeah.
Even in fights that he is winning.
Somebody who, unless we see major changes, is destined to be a fringe top 5 kind of fighter. Very good, but not truly special.
Yep.
I think that's it for this week's episode of Heavy Hands. Looking forward to UFC 321. There are some other fights on here, as I've mentioned earlier, that are certainly worth watching as well. So I have faith that next week we will have a lot to talk about, and hopefully that includes the main event. Hopefully, at the very least, we have a lot of gloating to do it regarding the main event, even if we don't have a lot of fight to discuss.
Yeah. I mean, and if it is sad, at least we'll have a lot of like mourning to fill the airtime.
A lot of whinging to do. The people love that.
They do.
Okay. Thanks for listening, everybody. Check out the Heavy Hands Patreon. Find us on social media at Boxing Bush, at Evil Greg Jackson, at King Typo on the Blue Sky, which I never look at, but hey, send me messages over there if you want. And we'll be back next week. Until then, if you came here today for the finer points of face punching, you came to the right place. This has been Heavy Hands.